All right, so we'll get started on time just so we can be respectful of everybody's time. But my presentation today is going to be on bolstering student success through intuitive and engaging software. My name's Frank Petrapolo. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Biology and Chemistry at County College of Morris, which is located in Randolph, New Jersey. The classes that I primarily teach are Anatomy and Physiology 1 and 2, lecture and lab. I also teach Pathophysiology, which is an upper level course typically for nursing majors. I have taught different modalities, face-to-face, hybrid, online. Pathophysiology, for example, is exclusively online. So it's going to just depend on demands of the department and typically the semester by semester basis and the needs. Today's session, what we're going to do is we're going to look at various software that I utilize both inside and outside the classroom, Google Forms, Kahoot, and Zoom as well. I'm sure mostly everybody is familiar with Kahoot at this point, and Zoom. Google Forms, it's been hit and miss when I've done a few different presentations on functionality of it. But if you're not familiar with Kahoot or Zoom, I'll go over that basically as well in regards to its functionality when we actually get there. But really the purpose is to engage the students both inside and outside the classroom with any of these software that we're going to discuss today. Hopefully this engagement leads to more instructor-student types of interactions, student-student interaction, and then overall in the course, that should lead to increases in student success. Now, while these are not guarantees to actually increase that student success in the classroom, they definitely do lead to pulling the student more into the process of the decision making in the classroom, and they realize that their feedback is actually valued, and when their feedback is valued, they're more engaged, and again, hopefully that involvement is going to allow them to become more interested and really want to succeed in that class. Also, because I teach different modalities, and I know at this point, especially post-COVID, or at least where we're starting to return back to the classroom, a lot of institutions are retaining courses that maybe in the past never had been offered in an online format or a hybrid format. So you really have to figure out how can I use this software uniformly across my courses, but in what ways do I have to change how the delivery of the software is going to be utilized, and the importance of it being uniformly used across the different modalities is that for statistical purposes, tracking what is going on, if you're using, say, Kahoot in face-to-face, hybrid, and online, that allows you to at least as a whole or collectively look at the statistical data and make those data-driven decisions that you need to make for the courses moving forward for subsequent semesters. So the first software that I'd like to talk about is going to be Google Form. Google Form is a free resource, and it's actually part of the Google Suite. Now, the Google Suite is going to have resources available to pretty much anybody that has a Gmail account. So if you don't have a Gmail account, what you would have to do is sign up for this account for free, and then within that Google Suite, you're going to get a lot of products that are very comparable to Microsoft Office. So there's the Google version called Google Docs of Microsoft Word. There's the Google version of Excel. There's the Google version of PowerPoint. But one of the other software that is going to be located within this Google Suite is actually called Google Form. And Google Form allows you to send out surveys to whether it's colleagues or students, and it allows you to gather information, and I'm going to show you how you can use different types of questions and how you can send it in different ways and implement it, say, into Zoom, and how it really does allow you to collect a lot of information. It is going to display that information visually for you to see. Typically, it's going to use either bar graphs or it's going to use pie charts. It depends on which type of questions you actually have set up. But the point is, all of these resources are available to you for free. And besides having the free resources of all the functionality of these various software that they offer, you also will be included in that free access is 15 gigabytes of space on what's called a Google Drive. So if you used OneDrive before or you use any type of cloud-based storage software, this is what I'm talking about with Google Drive. It's a cloud-based storage software where as you update something in a document, it's going to update across all your devices, which is very nice. Now, talking about updates, students will sometimes share with me if they have a Google Drive, a document in there, and I can edit it. For example, if they're going to complete a lab assignment, but before they submit it, they have a question maybe on a term, they're unclear between two things, and they share something with me. The only thing is I try not to use it for stuff like that because they have to grant access to me, and we're really going off of the learning management system that we use. So in that sense, I try to tell students, download it as a PDF and email it to me through your school email to my instructor email. That way everything's more professional and more proper in that way. But sometimes students forget. But when I am working with colleagues, and we do have OneDrive at our institution, so I use that more, but there have been times when we are working on a Google form, myself and another colleague or a group of colleagues, and whoever is the originator of that Google form can add individuals as editors, or they can add other individuals as viewers. And going back to what I was saying before, time updates, if Johnny, Sally, and Joey are all making updates at the same time, those updates show across instantly as soon as somebody clicks off the document, instantly across everybody's device. So that's excellent because there's no more email tag where you're sending things back and forth and people are working at documents at the same time and you're making the same updates. So that's very, very helpful. Google Forms, though, are nice. Going to my term intuitive on here, they are super simple to use. If you have never used it before, I suggest just trying to create one, and you could play around with it and figure it out probably in about 5-10 minutes. There's great YouTube videos. I'll include my email at the end. I'd be more than happy to walk anybody through it or share any resources that I have that can kind of get you up and off the ground running. There's multiple choice questions. You can include scales. You could do short answer. You could do paragraph. You can do all these different types of questions. If there's a type of question you're thinking of, it's in there for you to use. So it's very helpful. Now, what exactly do I use Google Forms, though, for? So the first thing is that I use it to help schedule events that are going to be coming up. I can use a type of check all that applied grid, and students can see dates and times, and they can just check off as many as they want. And what this has really been helpful is that instead of, as the instructor, me just saying, okay, we're meeting at Friday at 8 a.m., this is bringing students into the learning process. This is engaging students, and the students really do appreciate that. I know on the evaluations that we receive each semester, one is something to the effect like, my instructor values my feedback. And I was reading this last semester. I always score very well on this, but I was really thinking about that question and the depth of that question. And I was like, you know what? I would really like to have everybody feel that way in my course, where they all feel their feedback. I started looking at software that I use, and I took some time, but I did realize that I do try and get as much feedback as students as possible. And something like this, scheduling events, this allows you to incorporate that feedback directly into the course during that semester. It's not having to wait until the future semester where it's not going to benefit that student who is actually leaving the feedback now. So students really appreciate when you give them options for meeting. Moving down to the last two bullet points, we can kind of summarize these together. In regards to surveys or polls, you can once again send the link for the Google survey via email. I'll show you how you can directly input their emails into a Google form. There's also a link that you can copy and paste and just email it out through the email at your school or whatever account you're using. And there's also a way to embed links into your LMS, which is pretty cool, and I'll have an example of that coming up. These surveys or these polls, they can gather basic demographic information such as email from a student, maybe what are they working per week in amount of hours, what is their major, what is their course load right now, what other science classes, for me that's what I'm interested in, what other science classes are you taking at the same time, say as anatomy and physiology, are you taking chemistry? Well, then you have a pretty hectic workload, especially if you add 2 other classes like say calculus and an elective at that point in time. So I can at least gauge some information by that. In regards to the surveys and polls, I can also assign pre and post assessment questions, not in the sense that they are graded, but what I mean is, say we are holding an event like a Zoom session and we are doing a content-based Zoom session on cellular respiration, which is something I teach in my course. How do you feel about the topic going into the session, and how do you feel about the topic coming out of the session? And then I'm also going to show you how these surveys can actually be adaptive. Not in the sense of 100% truly adaptive artificial intelligence that the survey is thinking on its own, but as the instructor, if you can anticipate the answers to some of the questions, it can actually link, based on the answer, a student to another area in the survey versus just going right down the list and asking them maybe an unapplicable question. So as I was saying, by incorporating the student feedback, this is just letting the students know that you really do want to hear from them, they know their feedback is valued, and that you really do take them seriously as a student, and that you're there to mentor them, you're there to coach them, you're there to assist them through the course. They're not just a number, and they're not an unimportant entity. They really are important to both you and the institution. So here's the Google form that I actually had set up for one of my courses, and you can see on the left-hand image there that there's some responses already. So I took the screenshot after the form was completed, and we'll come back to that later in regards to reviewing the actual responses. But you can see that there's a red arrow in that left-hand picture, and this is how you would actually get the information to send out the Google form. Now on the right hand of this slide, we have 3 different ways that you can send out the Google form. On the top right image, this is where you can actually place in anybody's email that you would like to send this survey to. So if you have in your LMS where you can maybe copy to your clipboard all of the students' email in a particular course, then you could just paste all those emails at one time into this send text box that pops up, and then just click send. However, I typically don't use that because I like to send it from our school's email to the student's school's email. So I use this middle box on the right, which is where if you click over and there's that little paperclip logo that's highlighted in the center of that image, this is going to give you a link so that you can then copy that link and place it in your own email. So I'll usually say, hello class, this is a survey for such and such. If you could please complete it by such and such date. Thank you. Your feedback is appreciated as always, and sign my name. This is a much more effective way to me to actually get the survey out. Now you can also click on the box that says shorten URL, and I will show you guys the importance of that usually when you're using the Google form in Zoom. It just makes things easier and it makes it shorter and doesn't take up as much space. If you look on the bottom, the last thing that you can do in regards to sending out a Google form is you can actually embed an HTML. So if you've ever seen within an LMS where whether it's a YouTube video, whether it's Flickr, whether it's really most electronic media resources now, where you see a little box, and let's say it's YouTube, you see the thumbnail, you see like the video in the background with the play button in the middle, that's an embedded HTML. So if you wanted to embed the HTML for a Google form, what you would see is the very beginning, the introduction of the Google form in the LMS. The students can click on it. It'll open up another tab or another page based on how they have their web browser set up, and then they can actually participate in the Google form. I've used this as well, where I've not only emailed it to them, but say I sent out an announcement with the embedded HTML format right in that announcement, because Unfortunately, sometimes students don't read emails. Unfortunately, sometimes they're reading announcements, but not emails. So I try to capture the audience in more than one form or fashion at a particular time. So this is the Google form that I would send out if I was going to ask, say, for times to schedule an event. So on the left-hand side, this is what I would see on my end, and this is called a checkbox grid type question. You could think of it as check all out of apply. And after you set up the rows and columns in that left-hand side, and let's say now you sent it to students, what exactly would the students see? So if you look in the upper right picture, you can see that at the very top it says your email. I always request that students put in their email. That way, if I have to go in and see who made a particular answer entry, I can do so. But by default, it is not going to necessarily show you who is associated with what answer. It'll typically say like the number of students. So on this upper right-hand picture, you can see that, say, on Wednesday 2/16, a student can check off 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. On Friday 2/18, a student can check off 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. And at least in that way, I'm able to see who will be able to meet in regards to my schedule and other students' schedule. Now, if you look on that lower right-hand picture, you can see that there were 4 respondents total, and on Friday 2/18, that blue bar is the tallest, meaning that that's the only time 4 respondents are able to meet. Okay, and that was at 8 a.m. on Friday. So the nice thing with this is the fact that you can see in this example, I just happened to be very available this week during the spring semester, which was pretty much all the time. And there are other times where maybe I would not have this much availability, and you can still give students options, maybe 3 or 4 options, versus where I had like 30 options here that the students could potentially meet. So you do want to tailor this on a, individual basis, but again, it's just giving the students options where it's not locking them down to one time and pretty much giving the impression, well, you can't make it too bad, that's unfortunate, but we're still going to meet. At least this, you have data behind why you chose that particular time to actually meet with students. So now we're moving on to how I would use Google Form for a survey. And I do want to pull back a little bit from a few slides ago and circle back from where I was saying that you can make these somewhat of an adaptive survey. So this was a survey that I was utilizing last semester with another instructor.
Turn the video off, by the way.
Oh, okay.
We were piloting a software last semester for students in regards to a support services that we're trying to increase the success of our students. And what we were looking at was how effective did students think this software that we were using actually was. So notice on the left-hand image right here, there are 2 instructors listed, Professor Burns and myself. And notice to the right, though, students aren't going to see what's written there where it says go to section 2 or go to section 3. This is that adaptive component that I've been alluding to, where if you answer Professor Burns, you're not going to get my section numbers to come up in section 3. You're going to go to section 2. If you answer my name, you're going to go to section 3, which was my specific section numbers for Bio 101 this past spring. But then, after you answered section 2 or section 3, depending on where you were brought, notice on the right-hand side, under each of these, it says go to section 4 for both. So now the students are brought to the general questions about mastering A&P assignments that we were using as the support service this semester, and they have those general questions. Then, a little further on, we can't see that here, but a little further on, what I did was, based on feedback was, did you use mastering A&P, yes or no, which was in section 4, then it would bring you to a whole separate set of questions. So this is pretty cool because it can be direct. I know there have been surveys sometimes where we're like, why are we getting these questions? This is redundant. We try to streamline this as much as possible, and every time I do a survey, I try to streamline it so it doesn't get redundant and almost to the point where it's annoying, I should say, and students are going to take this more seriously, or your colleagues are going to take this more seriously, and are more willing to participate not only on this survey and give you more thorough and more correct answers, but in the future as well if they're going to participate. Now this image is the last of the Google form information in regards to just basic functionality. Besides seeing responses right on the Google form, which you can do, you can also download via an Excel file into Microsoft Excel and save that data. Now, you will see some additional information here versus what you would see on the Google form, and we're going to circle back again to the Google form and what you would see on the website when we talk about Zoom, but you can see a timestamp here, which you're not going to be able to see on the website. If a student entered the email address, it comes up a little more nicely here where it's very associated with their answers, and then you can see their actual answers here. Now, we got some pretty good answers in this feedback here. We shoot for 4s and 5s when we're looking for feedback on a scale from 0 to 5, and we did attain all of that. So this, I believe, was the post-assessment survey, which was nice because everybody moved up in the categories. This is also helpful having it in an Excel file, because what will happen is, as we know, Excel will accept equations in there, so maybe we want to run our own statistical data because the way that Google categorizes it on the website is not necessarily what we're looking for. We can also maybe copy and paste information if we're making a summary table in Microsoft Word, a document that we're going to submit to the institution or share it with the students. So this will just help you categorize the data in a different way versus the website, which is summarizing it in a more visual fashion. The next thing that I utilize in the classroom in regards to software and outside of the classroom is going to be Kahoot. Now, Kahoot is a free resource. However, there are paid plans available. And every time I go back on the website, it seems like there's more and more plans. I remember when I bought the paid resource, and I've been having it for a few years, and I'm locked into the old price, luckily. There is 4 different paid plans now. There's Plus, Pro, Premium, and Premium Plus. I have my cheat sheet here because I can't remember other companies' data, unfortunately. But with the basic plan, the free plan, if you want to try it out, you have things like multiple choice questions and true false, and that's about it. You'll be able to gather some basic data. Once you start getting into the Plus plan, which is $5 a month, you'll be able to get Pro and Classic slides, which means that there's going to be somewhat of a library for you to pick from pre-built questions. I don't typically use that. And when you set up your own Kahoot, you can dictate on there whether it's able to be shared with other instructors or not. So sometimes you might not be able to obtain other instructors' info based on how they have it set up. And the first paid plan is capable of 50 players. I believe the free plan is only 25, so depending on how many students you have at one time, that might be an issue with the free plan. The Pro plan, which is what I have, it adds poll questions, it adds an image library, and capable of 100 players per game, and that's important for me because I teach a lot of triple sections, which means I have 72 students at one time, so the free and the plus won't work for me. There's also a premium plan, which gives you a word cloud, so all words can pop up on the screen as students pop them up. There's also open-ended questions, and there's 200 player capability. That's $13.50 a month. And then the Premium Plus, this is more geared towards businesses, not education, where you have this brainstorm function and students can pop up 3 words or 3 ideas, and then there can be a vote on those ideas. So that's good for like a business meeting, and 200 players for that one as well. That one's $15 a month. But when I start using Kahoot in the classroom, very early on in the classroom, I noticed that mostly everybody is aware of what Kahoot is, and then if I don't use it for a week or two, students are hounding me. Why aren't we using Kahoot? It's so much fun. It's a great way to study. So if you're worried students aren't going to know how to use it, they often hit the ground running with this. Maybe I have one student out of 150 students in a semester that actually don't know how to use this. So very well received. And because it's a game-based software, it really makes learning fun. It makes it competitive. And I don't use it for grades, but it definitely helps break the ice if you use it early on in the semester. Now, the instructor is able to gather feedback as in what do the students know and what do the students not know? What areas need maybe more coverage from the instructor's end, or what are the students just simply not getting? The learner feedback, it's going to allow students to realize, you know what, I thought I understood the lesson from last time, but apparently I didn't, so now I need to go study more. Or at the back end of class, sometimes I use it, it'll say to a student, you really weren't paying too much attention in class today, maybe in the future you pay a little better attention. So you can use this in a few different ways, and I'm going to talk about that again shortly. But data analysis is absolutely important from any type of software that you use, or really anything that you're doing in the classroom, and you can gather a lot of data analysis from Kahoot, and you can use Kahoot for attendance. So instead of me wasting 5 minutes in a triple section with 72 students at the beginning of class, trying to get everybody's name for attendance, what I can do is I can do a quick Kahoot review, kill two birds with one stone at the same time, and we can not only review from, say, the prior class, but I can also take attendance. One little tip, though, for that, if you're going to do that, and I made a little mistake my first semester doing this, students can enter their own username. And I remember distinctly to this day, somebody put in Bunny as their username, and I'm like, okay, who's Bunny? Because there was a few students who didn't attend class. So I actually, from that point moving forward, to use it for attendance, I said, make sure you use your first name and the first initial from your last name. So for me, it would be like Frank P. And that way I can use that for attendance moving forward. And I've never had a student argue with me over that. They're like, oh, okay, because I explained, I'm going to use this for attendance. That's why you have to display it that way. And I never have to say it again through the semester. They remember and they don't put silly things down. These are two examples of questions that you can potentially see in a Kahoot. On the left-hand side, we have what is called quiz, which is their fancy way of saying multiple choice questions. And then on the right, we have true, false. Now, if you look on the right where it says Kahoot in that purple box right there, you can actually insert an image here. So let's say I had a specimen from lab that I wanted students to identify, and you could put it in any type of question. It's not just this true, false. I can insert something from my computer, or they have a photo library that you can search, which you get with the paid plans. So that's nice. Sometimes it adds a little more description to the question or clarification, so that could be helpful. I also use polls in the classroom and puzzles. Puzzles, you just put things in order that are jumbled on the screen. And the polls really do help with the gauging understanding, not necessarily correctness for content. And these Kahoots, they can be played one-on-one, meaning each player's entering answers, or they can be team-based. That's if you're using it in the classroom. You can also send students the link through what is called a challenge, and if another student is logged in at the same time, they play against that student, or they play against the computer if no other students are going to be logged in. But what will happen is at the beginning when you're setting the Kahoot up, whether you're using the iOS app, you're using the web browser to log in, it projects a code on the screen, and you can see the pin in the lower right hand of each of these images. It would be larger as this is going through and people are starting to sign in, but they go to kahoot.it and then enter in the 6-digit PIN code, enter their username, and then the game can start. One last thing that's important, Kahoot just released, and I have not implemented this yet because I don't like implementing new technology in the middle of the semester, but Kahoot just implemented a PowerPoint add-on where you actually don't have to leave the PowerPoint or whatever presentation software you're using. It's right inside the software, and it's projected right on the screen. You just need, if you're using like a institution device, you might not be able to add the actual add-on without permission. So that's something to think about. Formative versus summative feedback. This is important to really think about this presentation in the sense of, well, why are these software important? Besides engagement, that feedback component is something that's important. So formative feedback is going to be these little bits of feedback that students can gather throughout the semester. So for example, a quiz is more formative feedback where an exam is going to be summative. Okay, and the point of using formative types of feedback is going to be where students can understand they need more work in a particular area versus receiving a bad grade on a high stakes assessment. So I use Kahoot either at the end of class or I use it at the beginning of class so that they can see, did they retain what we learned in the last class, or did they even get the concept from what we just went over, maybe a hard concept in class today. The summative feedback, as I said, is typically examinations. However, I do use group review sessions, and I use Kahoots in those group review where maybe it's 100 questions, and that's more of a cumulative review. So I would lump that under summative for our purposes today, although traditionally summative feedback is going to be something more like a examination. You do want to try and build up to summative by using formative assessments here and there first. Positive versus negative feedback is also important. Positive feedback is supportive, so that would be like saying you did a great job on this assessment. There were a few things that you need to correct. Please see my comments below. Let me know if you have any questions. Whereas negative, it's sometimes unavoidable. You do want to use positive as much as possible, but you can't use positive feedback 100% of the time. So if somebody puts a wrong answer down and you have to correct it to make sure that they know the correct answer, that is technically negative feedback. But if you use a combination, so when I use lab assignments as an example right now, I am going through the lab assignment and I am saying, okay, this one's wrong, here's the correct answer. This one's wrong, here's the correct answer. This one's wrong, here's the correct answer. If I just gave that back to a student, yeah, overall it's negative. It's nothing good. Here's what you did wrong. But if I leave a personalized statement at the end, hi so-and-so, thank you for submitting the assignment. Please see the feedback that I left throughout the assignment. And like I said before, if you have any questions, please let me know. Students do appreciate that personalization, especially when you use their name. So I always make sure I use their name in that overall feedback. And they're more likely to talk to me then versus if I just left that negative feedback and moved on to the next student. So that's really important. Going back to Kahoot, what type of data can we pull out of this software? You can see on this left-hand side, this is going to show you who answered the correct amount of questions, what their ranking is. So students are going to be ranked in Kahoot not only by correctness, but they also get points for answering it the quickest. So if 3 people have the same 100% correct answer, whoever answered it first is in first place, whoever answered it second is in second place, and whoever answered it third is in third place. So it is point-based system. At the end, it shows you who the top 3 winners of the game actually are. And again, never been a problem in class. Students really enjoy this, and it creates some friendly competition, which is good. The upper right image, that is showing you the percent correct or percent incorrect. You can toggle between the two by question, and it also shows you the type of question. Was it a quiz? Was it true, false? And the bottom right is showing you, if you click on an individual question, the breakdown of the answers. How many people answered A? How many people answered B? How many people answered C? And they're using their electronic devices in the classroom. The question's projected on the screen or the board, but then they're answering on their actual device. So it's a computer, tablet, cell phone, whatever they have with them will work for this. And then going to data that you can actually download, notice this is an Excel file, and you can see that it tells you when it was played, who hosted it in case you share this with another instructor, how many players there were. The overall performance is the next category. Feedback is something I don't use. If you look in the third purple category there, at the end, just because I don't have time in my courses to do this, students can say, yeah, this was a really good Kahoot and this helped me, or no, it wasn't. So they can actually leave feedback, but I don't have that enabled. And then at the bottom, you can look at final scores, you can look at the Kahoot summary, or then break down by question, which is great. So finishing up here, you do have to modify sometimes the way that this software is going to be delivered, not necessarily the software itself. So Kahoot in a face-to-face class, yeah, absolutely. Students come in and they play the game right in the classroom. However, online classes, you can, in an asynchronous course, you cannot require students to be present in some type of a group meeting. So in that sense, I use that challenge feature where I send them the link for Kahoot. I can still obtain the data. The unfortunate thing is less than an ideal amount of students actually do use that software. That's the only drawback. How do you deliver this? Well, it could be through email, could be through teleconferencing, or let's say you had a group session on Zoom, you could record the group session, play the Kahoot, say, with the students who did show up, or use the Google form with the students who did show up, and then the students who were not able to attend could then watch that at a future time. And that goes down to my last bullet point, be sensitive to students' needs. If a student can't show up because they have a work commitment and it's an online class, that's why you record it so that they can watch it later. Or maybe they don't have an internet connection that'll support them both being in the group session and playing Kahoot. So you just have to be sensitive to where if somebody is not doing something, there's probably a reason why behind that they are not actually doing something. We have here Google Form and Zoom. So you can see here what I am doing is I'm in the Google Form. Like before, I'm clicking send, but now I'm going to get the URL. I shorten the URL, and then I'm in the Zoom meeting, and all I do is copy and paste this form link into the actual chat box. I tell all the students, please check the chat, and then what'll happen is, if you click on responses in that upper right-hand picture where the red arrow is, you actually get up to date and without refreshing the responses as they come in. So you as the instructor can check these responses out in real time. So notice the upper left-hand corner says, I am confident in my understanding of this topic. I'm using a Likert scale here, not a yes and no, because I'm really trying to gauge what the true feelings of the student coming into this session is. Notice on the right-hand side, the upper image is going to be, the pie chart upper image is going to be consisting of 2s and 3s, meaning the students are a little shaky on this information. But then if we go to the second question, after attending this session today, which is my post-assessment question, I'm confident in my understanding of this topic. Notice now we have 5, 4, and 3s. So we dropped the 2. More than likely, the students who were in the 2 range moved up to 3 and 4, and the students before in the 3 range moved up to 4 and 5. So this is exactly what we want to see, as many 4 and 5s as possible. But like I said, this is real time. I shared it in Zoom. I don't like to use the Zoom polls just because the way that you can get the data from that, this is easier for me. And then the last thing that I would like to finish up with is right here you can see that I have Zoom open on each side of the screen here. And what I did was I was sharing my screen on the left-hand side rather. I was sharing my iPad screen, which you can do in Zoom via AirPlay, so that means wirelessly. You can also have your iPad hardwired, say, to your laptop or desktop, whatever computer you're using. And I was able to share the screen, which I had open in the Zoom app. And then on the right-hand side, I was sharing the screen of my laptop that I had the web browser open to Kahoot.com through Zoom, and we were able to play the game. I was able to record it in both sessions if I wanted to, and again, push that video out through the LMS to all my students. All right, everybody, I am done with my presentation at this point. If you guys would like to contact me in the future, want to take a screenshot of the screen, or if you'd like to take a picture with your cell phone, need my contact info, I'd be more than happy to discuss this software. If you have any questions about the software, how to get up and running with this software, I'd be more than happy to answer those questions. Or if you have questions now, I'd be more than happy to spend a few minutes and answer the questions with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I'll stick around if you do have questions, but I do appreciate it, and I hope everybody has a nice rest of the day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.